Let's move to the next session, which is the Dayton Agreement, which is one of the most important topics that has played an important role in addressing the crisis in Bosnia. Are we speaking about Dayton?
So now we can change. I can go there.
So now this is the second session.
Yes, please.
Second session is about the Dayton Peace Agreement. We are talking about 1995, November, December 1995. First of all, let me share with you parties involved in this negotiation. So you have, first of all, representatives from three countries. You have representatives from Bosnia and Herzegovina, you have representatives from Serbia, and you have representatives from Croatia. You also have representatives from Bosnian Serb, but it's a very interesting story, the relationship between representatives of Serbia and Bosnian Serb representatives. Throughout negotiation, they did not talk to each other. So I'll explain what happened. So then you have EU members. You have France, Germany, UK, and EU representation as well. You have a representative from Russia. And finally, you have the US. So these are the parties to this Dayton peace negotiation. Second thing I would like to share with you is why Dayton? Why this city? Why the US? Well, most of previous negotiation rounds were in European capitals, in Geneva, in those diplomatic capitals, Geneva, Vienna, those towns, those cities, and all these negotiation rounds have failed. They did not produce any outcome, any settlement. So Americans thought like we should not go back to Geneva. If we go back, well, this is another reason that this negotiation might fail again. So let's do it in the U.S. And then why Dayton in the U.S.? Well, they wanted to isolate these parties from the press. So they have chosen Wright-Patterson military base in the Dayton, Ohio. First of all, they wanted to isolate them from the press, from the public, and at the same time they wanted to demonstrate the U.S. military power because this is the military base. So they wanted to scare them. You have a deal, otherwise we can do something about it. So that's why Dayton. So now let me speak about three phases. There is pre-negotiation phase, there is a negotiation, and there is this packaging or the post-negotiation phase, which is also my third session. So pre-negotiation phase is a negotiation that was going on around before these parties met in Dayton, Ohio. So many important items have been agreed already in a pre-negotiation phase. So what has been agreed in this pre-negotiation phase? For example, that the state Bosnia and Herzegovina will be divided between two entities, 51-49%. This is the formula, like one state, two entities, three constituent people. This is a formula. Every negotiation must have a formula. Two-state solution is a formula for the Palestine, or one-state solution is another formula. When it comes to Bosnia, it's one state, two entities, three constituent people. So this is a formula for a deal, for a settlement. Then you have to discuss, okay, one state, what are the authorities of this one state? What do they have military? Do they have police? Do they have foreign policy? What do they? Then if it is two entities, how big is one entity? How big is the second entity? What is the name of one entity? What is the name of the other entity? So all these things they have agreed in a pre-negotiation phase. So Holbrooke, which was having this shuttle diplomacy, flying from Belgrade to Zagreb to Sarajevo, and then occasionally regional capitals, Istanbul, and he brought Bosnian delegation. So the eventual formula was 51% for the federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and this is Bosnian Croat, Bosnian Muslim, dominant entity, and 49% will be given to Bosnian Serbs. So this has been accepted. Well, I said earlier, throughout the war, Bosnian legitimate government controlled around 27%, up to 30%. And then only towards the end of the war, we were able to liberate, 20-25%, and we reached this around 55%. And then Americans said stop, because they realized, okay, we are about to reach this formula that we have already agreed in this pre-negotiation phase, which is going on. Let's stop this offensive it was a joint Bosnian and Croatian army, which is another state. It was a joint Bosnian-Croatian offensive against Serbs in Bosnia, and Croatian offensive was also against Serbs in Croatia. So once we were about to liberate maybe the whole country, Americans said, it's enough. You have to stop. You have to stop it there, because we have agreed that it will be 51-49%. Second important decision was the name of Republika Srpska. You know, they have this Republika, which is like it is a republic. Republic is a state. You know, so our leadership was not happy with this, and I think Richard Holbrooke, in his book, he regretted. He said, "This is my mistake. I pushed too much Alija Izetbegović. If I realized it earlier, I wouldn't have pushed him that much." But this story happened in this town, in this city, in Istanbul. Slobodan Milošević told him, okay, this has to be Republika Srpska, and then maybe he gave in something else, and Holbrooke came back to Istanbul, told Alija Izetbegović, that's it, you have to accept the name. And how he accepted the Alija when he was trading off, it's always a trade-off. You have to compromise, but you ask for something. And then Americans told them, okay, we are going to bomb Serb positions, and then you will be able to liberate the country, and you'll move on, and things like that. Maybe Alija Izetbegović believed that there will be no settlement. Let me have this short-term goal, let me liberate my country, and who knows what will happen with this. Maybe Republika Srpska will never exist. So this is a pre-negotiation phase, which lasted for, I would say, 3 months, maybe from July, after genocide in Srebrenica, July 11, July 12, to October, November. And then we are coming to a real negotiation, where all these parties that I talked about, they are in this Wright-Patterson military base. They are negotiating, they are discussing. And there is this American mediation. There is Richard Holbrooke with the U.S. delegation there, and with other EU, Russian, German, UK, French, Serbian, Croatian delegation there as well. So there are many stories about these negotiations, which lasted for 21 days. It's 21 days. And what they discussed in this negotiation round, it was about constitutional order. Like, what are the competencies of the state, of the entities, of the cantons, maps? You know, 51-49. But my hometown, is it Republika Srpska or is it federation? For example, it used to be Muslim majority town by 1%, and you have, and most of this municipality where I used to come from was controlled by Serb, and minority part was controlled by Muslims. So in Dayton it was negotiated. Where is how the border is? It was about maps, and it was about constitutional order. There are a lot of stories about maps. And the critical negotiations were about the status of Sarajevo, capital. Sarajevo was under siege, and Sarajevo was divided. Majority part of the capital was controlled by our legitimate government, and minority part was controlled by Serb forces. And the second critical item in negotiation was Brčko district. Well, Brčko district is one of declared goals of Republika Srpska at the initial stage of the conflict. They wanted to have a corridor, physical corridor, from Serbia to Banja Luka. Banja Luka is the capital of Republika Srpska. So this is a narrow area just next to the Croatian border. And this Brčko town, city, is a majority Muslim city, but they concentrated heavy forces, and they wanted to dominate, and they were able to defeat Bosnians there. There were many refugees, there were many crimes committed. Some of their military were indicted for these war crimes, now in prisons. So Serbs were controlling, and they wanted to have this physical connection from Serbia to Banja Luka. And for us and Croatian side, it was also important to cut this Republika Srpska into two. So it was a critical point. Let me just tell you the story. 20th day. So Holbrooke said, we are going to announce tomorrow morning that the Dayton Peace Agreement has failed, and I prepared a press release where I ask all parties to continue with their cessation of hostilities, but we have no deal. It is because of Brčko district. This was still not decided because Alija Izetbegović did not want to put his signature on the drafted agreement because of this. He said, I'm not going to sign. I don't want this town, which is like Muslim majority city. I don't want this connection between Serbia and RS. Bosnia will never be able to survive as a unified state if there is this connection, and so on and so forth. So Holbrooke said, okay, fine, the negotiations are ending. We have not reached the deal. We are packing ourselves. So he was very smart and very intelligent. He was like pretending as if negotiation is ending. And he told his delegations from the US, let's pack and let's leave. There'll be one person left, and which will tell them, okay, you have few hours left. No days, hours, to make an agreement on Brčko district. So they left. They said tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock we are organizing a press conference and we are announcing that the agreement has failed. No settlement. So, well, Slobodan Milošević, the leader of Serbia, he was really, I think, most interested in a compromise. So he has really. He was very cooperative, I would say. When it comes to unification of Sarajevo, which was another critical point, he said, okay, you deserved unified Sarajevo because you dig the tunnel under the airport, you survived the siege, you Bosnians, you suffered.
Sorry, I think we don't have time for all details.
Okay.
Because it is very important also to resume the content,
package.
Content of the agreement and the role of the international community and the evaluation of the agreement itself, the weaknesses and the strengths.
Okay, good. Yeah, I'll finish. So eventually, in 2 a.m., they finally reached an agreement about Brčko district. They said, okay, there will be an arbitration. 1 year after the Dayton Peace Agreement, there will be 3 votes, 1 Bosnian, 1 Serbian, and the third one will be American. And it was acceptable for all. Dayton was drafted, and the next day it was signed. So now the structure of the Dayton.
Exactly.
Now I'm talking about the Dayton Peace Agreement is a very complex peace agreement. This agreement itself has different annexes to agreement. For example, Annex 1A is military dimension. It has a military dimension. What does it mean? It means that as we sign this agreement, NATO will come in and will preserve 60,000 foreign troops, will be under NATO command with UN mandate and will be securing the agreement. Then Annex 3 is about elections. Who organized election in a post-war? Elections is very important. Who observed elections? So it was another part of the agreement. Annex 4 is about constitutional order. State, two entities, one of those entities has 10 cantons, so it's about constitutional order of the Bosnian state. Annex 6 is about human rights provisions. What kind of human rights provisions do you provide to citizens of Bosnia and Herzegovina? And this is very important, especially later on as we fight with the European Court for Human Rights in Strasbourg, when some people complained, well, my right to vote, which is guaranteed by the Bosnian Constitution based on this Annex 4 and Annex 6, I have a right to vote, and I have a right for passive and active voting right. So they have taken the Bosnian government to the court, to European Court of Human Rights, and these individuals, they have won those cases. So we have to change our legislation on election based on these provisions. Then Annex 7 is about refugees, another important annex. Refugees have a right to return. So there are a few other annexes, less important, but it was a very complex structure of this agreement. So role of the international community, evaluations and strengths and weaknesses. The major role was played by the U.S., by Richard Holbrooke, He was a really tough negotiator, very smart, very intelligent, and that was a success story. The U.S. wanted this deal. Clinton administration was very much interested in to have this deal. Ahmed said there was a change in France. You have Mitterrand, he was on exit. Chirac was already new president, and there was this very strong collaboration between France, Chirac, and Clinton at the same time in a pre-negotiation phase and negotiation. Later on, there will be change in the UK. Blair, Social Democrat, will come, and they will also be very much more pro-Bosnian. John Major left; he was more pro-Serb. So this is the role, and everyone was really willing. Even Russians were. Later on there will be partnership for peace. So Russia as a state will be integrated into this defense structure of the Europe. They were part of the partnership for peace, and there was this strategic consultations body between Russia on one side and NATO members from the other side. So strengths and weaknesses of this Dayton Peace Agreement. Well, first of all, Dayton Peace Agreement brought a peace. And this is really the most important outcome of this settlement. Some people, always complain about Dayton. Some people are happy with the Dayton. Those who are optimists, they would say a glass is half full. Those who are more pessimists, they would say a glass is half empty. So this is never-ending debate in Bosnia. But I would say this. When the Dayton Peace Agreement has been signed, Bosnians generally celebrated. We're happy with the peace. We're not happy with all provisions, but generally they were happy with settlement, with the peace, there will be a state, unified state, well, decentralized but still unified. I would say Serbs in Bosnia, I think they were not happy. And I said earlier that Serb delegation from Bosnia and Serbian delegation from Serbia were not collaborating during this negotiation. Serbian President Slobodan Milošević, he was authorized. Holbrooke actually has imposed on him, you have to have a letter from Serb representatives in Bosnia that you are authorized, because I'm making a deal with you. I'm not making a deal with all of them. I just want you to be a key negotiator on Serb side. So that was secured in a pre-negotiation phase, so he was representing them, and he was really willing to make a compromise. Serbia was under isolation, under sanctions, so he wanted to get out of this mess. And he really made many concessions during negotiations. But Serbs from Bosnia were not happy with those. For example, their head of the national parliament, para-national parliament, his land eventually in Sarajevo was given to Bosnian side, and his household was given to Bosnian side. So he eventually left. Ahmed will speak about this, how Serb people whose territories and whose municipalities under their control during the wartime, when it was integrated to federation, when they decided to leave, no one forced them to leave. I mean, they left their houses. They even dig their graves of their grandparents and take the remains of their grandparents and parents with themselves to move to the other side. So this was really a crazy. No one forced them. There were international troops to guarantee the peace, their security, and their properties were guaranteed. But yet they decided to leave. So the strengths and the weaknesses of the agreement, well, the agreement was eventually, was supposed to make a peace. That was a positive result. The positive result is this. The peace eventually has been accepted by all. And why do I say this? Well, I tell this. There were 60,000 foreign troops that came into Bosnia in early 1996 to make this deal effective, to implement the deal, especially the military part. And no single foreign soldier died as a result of any hostilities in a peace-building process. So what does it mean? It means all sides eventually accepted the peace, accepted the settlement, and, well, we face many challenges. I will speak about this in my second session. And maybe this is enough for. Let's leave something for your questions. Thank you.
راح نفتح الأسئلة.
We will open the space for questions for Dayton Agreement, what's on it and what's not. It's important agreement. It has some weaknesses that we didn't mention. The first question that's supposed to be about the weaknesses in Dayton Agreement, because the lessons are so important. And we start the question. Who would like to ask questions? Dr. Ahmed. He would like to have the first question.
To add something about pre-Dayton developments. Even Bosnians often skip this one, Washington Agreement, which was actually an agreement to get Bosnians and Croats together, which was, in your case, would be something like strengthening opposition front against the regime or whatever. So without this consolidation, Dayton would not be possible. So there was, in '94, with American mediation, there was an agreement to end other conflicts among, some forces, Bosnian and Croat. Once they came together, then Dayton was possible. So this is very important.
شكرا دكتور أحمد. هذا ليس
Thank you. This is not a question. You don't have to answer. Well, that wasn't a question. Now the role yours, Mr. Firas. One question to each person. I have one question. The pre-negotiation period, they agreed that this is the map, this is the state. Is this agreement was imposed, or maybe by power, the controlled powers, or maybe it's the result of real negotiation between these conflict parties? It wasn't not by the countries that they were controlling the region, correct? Thank you, Mr. Firas.
Okay.
It's your floor. The floor is yours, Mr. Ahmed. Thank you. The negotiation took 21 days. This is a number of Astana sessions in Syria. It's almost the same. The question also, the agreement included clear points to have transitional justice for war criminals. To trial them. Dr. Nabil, the question is practically, how is it harmonized with the reality of Syria, the situation of Syria? There is an internal, the external, interference in this conflict, and this is a huge military or political external, pressure. It results in international agreements. So, what is the role of the local national society in the solution that the results of this conflict group from outside, and also their backgrounds and their acceptance of this, solutions hindered and stopped the local solution between the conflict parties directly? Is there was any possibility to find compromise solutions between the conflict local groups without any external interference, or maybe to reach a much better resolution and solution? Thank you, Dr. Nabil. Ms. Ruba, I would like to ask about the formula one question, it's all together. Your media group are so difficult. Yes, about the subject of the accountability, transitional justice, societies, the missing links that not exist in the agreement, that you are not you're not able, or not ready. 21 days that we now 13 years and we never agreed on one paper that all Syrians agreed on. So what are the missing links that you were were ready for Dayton Agreement? If it was there, more, the agreement would be much better. What are the missing things? What are the missing information in Dayton Agreement? And especially like the supervision it was affecting on the elections. Yes, thank you. Dr. Walid, yes, I just would like to say that a Dayton Agreement and the Syrian situation. In Syrian situation, we have, resolution 51, 52, and we have international society, we have conflicts, we have, crisis, complex crisis. The questions, how we can benefit from Dayton to have it on the Syrian scene, and your recommendations that because you exceeded, period of conflicts, if there was agreement. So what are the points that you made a mistake that we have not to fall in that mistake? This question should be in the last minute of this session, because it has a wide range of, discussion. Thank you. My question here, in your opinion, there was any, for example, is there any, by the United States, that United States were, giving a green light to the Bosnians to liberate, a percentage of the land? Looks like that's what I felt. That looks like there is a moment of Dayton. There's an attempt of all the weak parties, to have this agreement imposed, and also to bring Serb to negotiate. In Syria, the issue of the escalation today, the whole world agreed, and part of this, international society, and also this, positions, papers legally that also to be strengthened, and nobody will stay actually at the 254 agreement. Do you think there was Dayton any strengthening to the weak parties? Is there any Serbs to come to Dayton? Is there any anything that happened in a pre-agreement moment? Ms. Rada, yes, I would like to ask on the constitutions of Bosnia. It was, connected. It was an annex with the agreement. It was ready, organized, or it was just like Bosnians, they got it or bring it. It was how it just came complete. The constitutions, yes. My question is related in Dayton. How Dayton dealt with the non-state actors in Yugoslavia? Non-state actors agreements, non-state actors in Dayton. Last question. The question is about the role of the United Nations and the special, convoy being sent to Bosnia-Herzegovina and their role in Dayton. We noticed that when you said that there is, there is American pressure, but what this role of United Nations was marginalized. What are the best lessons to learn from for the Syrian situation? Because the role approximately is not actually enough for the United Nations or the national delegations. My question is also in the beginning of the context, if there is any resolutions, the national resolutions by the General Assembly and the Security Councils, including the principles and specifications, what are they? So they are already reached to this outcomes.
Constitutional provisions, the weakness of the Dayton Peace Agreement, and I will combine the first question and the eighth question. It's also about constitution and harmonization of the constitution with realities of the life and the weaknesses of the constitution. So I would say this: the state structure based on Dayton provision were quite weak. We in 1996 had only 3 ministries at the state level. So state government had only 3 ministries: foreign affairs, civil affairs, and external economic relations. So imagine a government, state government, with 3 state ministries. No Ministry of Police, no Ministry of Defense, other ministries, where all other entities, they have ministries of defense, ministries of police, so they have really the state powers where within entities. So this is one of the weaknesses of the Dayton Peace Agreement. But Dayton Peace Agreement at the same time provided a provision like, okay, this is only a transitional. You should have reforms in defense, in the judiciary, but Ahmed will talk also about this transitional justice. This is, I think, 4th or 5th session. There were 2 questions about this. So, but another very important weakness of the Dayton Peace Agreement, well, the Dayton Peace Agreement and the constitutional structure, Annex 4 of the Dayton Peace Agreement, has not been harmonized with human rights instruments within the EU. So the Dayton is in conflict with itself. So one of the articles in preamble of the Dayton Peace Agreement said the Bosnian constitution will have to be harmonized with all instruments of human rights in the EU, Council of Europe, European Declaration for Human Rights and Fundamental Freedoms. So that was a provision in the Dayton Peace Agreement. On the other side, there were some other provisions which were contrary to this provision from the preambula. So why Bosnian citizens only 10, 15, 20 years after Dayton Peace Agreement has been signed have taken their state, their government, to the court, international court, and they have prevailed in their cases. They have the European Court for the Human Rights and Democracy in Strasbourg. They eventually decided, well, these individuals, right, their rights have been taken away, and the Bosnian constitution is not harmonized, so you have to change constitution so that this constitution is harmonized with these provisions of human rights. And so that was a weakness of the Dayton Peace Agreement. So basically, I think Americans believe that these cases, court cases, will eventually help us. But this is already my 2nd session, actually my 3rd session, when I speak about the peace building process. So second question was about pre-negotiation phase, result of war imposed by US, mediation versus negotiation. Yeah. So well, this negotiation was, I mean, the US role in negotiation was never about mediation alone. You know, you have in international negotiations, you have mediators who are weak, who are just listening to the parties, trying to find a common ground, and then sharing the common ground with them, and then eventually it's up to the parties to accept or not. This is a mediation, very weak kind of, but this is not the case with the Dayton Agreement. Holbrooke was not a mediator, he was a negotiator. He actually imposed solution, or he forced the parties to accept. He traded off with them. He is a master in this. He was like pushing them around. He was forcing them. He was not bribing them, but he was really trading off with them, giving in, giving up on some other issues. So he was a real negotiator. So that's a difference. The very important point. Transitional justice, question number 3, but I will leave it with Brother Ahmed. He has the whole session about this transitional justice issues. So this is, I think, our next 4th or 5th session. The role of the domestic parties. I mean, why domestic political parties were not able to reach an agreement without external powers, without international agreement. I mean, it is. And it was not possible. It would be too naive to believe that the local parties, without international mediation, international negotiation, will they be able to reach any settlement? They never attempted, even throughout the war. Whenever they met and discussed and negotiated, it was under the supervision of the EU mediation, UN mediation, and eventually US mediation or negotiations. So I mean, we were fighting each other. We were not talking. We really fight. And initially, in the first initial stage of the war, we were trying to survive. Biologically speaking, we wanted to survive as a state. We really fought for our survival. I mean, we were defending ourselves. We were not on offensive. We controlled only 27% of the land. But we did have this legitimate government, which was internationally recognized. And we were weaker side in this fight. Then in 1993, there was a second front with Croats. So Bosnia was under siege, then Sarajevo was under siege, then there was this aggression, external aggression from Serbia, there was this internal conflict with Serbs. All of a sudden we have another front. We have internal conflict with Croats. So we were about to fail. I mean, there was one point of the time when American Minister of Defense, when he said, well, I mean, you cannot survive. I think this is a time when there is one city in Bihać, northwest of Bosnia. It was about to fall, and he said, well, there is no point of you defending yourself. Just give up. Minister of Defense of the US. This is at the peak of our struggle for biological survival. But then, I mean, Croatian leadership realized, well, if this part, northwest pocket, controlled by Bosnian, if it falls to Serb, then the Krajina, Serb Krajina in Croatia will be physically connected with Bosnian, Serb-dominated areas and then connected with Serbia. And it would be a greater Serbia. And we Croats, we Croatians in Croatia will never be able to liberate this part. So better we help these Bosnians fight another day, and the help eventually came from Croatia. So this small pocket survived, and we were able to fight another day and eventually to have a chance to negotiate a peace agreement. Again, transitional justice. Fifth, we move it to Brother Ahmed. Dayton and Syria, advices for Syria. You so far there were. I'm not familiar. You know much better than myself about all these negotiation attempts in Geneva, under UN supervision, maybe under EU.
We leave it to the end because this is one of the key questions at the end.
Yeah. Okay. We'll leave that for that part. Next question: U.S. giving green light to be on offensive. Yeah, this is really what happened. The US gave this green light to Bosnian authorities. They helped, they assisted us, they bombed Serb, they wanted to have this formula 49-51%. And once this has been achieved on the military field, they said now is enough, now we have to really negotiate a peace. And constitution not harmonized, I have said Dayton, and non-state actors. Well, we have state actors mainly as parties to negotiation. We have, as I said, Bosnia, Croatia, Serbia, US, France, Germany, Russia. We have EU representative, but there were no other non-state actors that I know were part of the negotiation. Ahmed? No, it is state actors alone. So I don't know what can I say about this. And finally, best lessons for Syria. We can leave it for the end. Exactly. UN resolution by the UN General Assembly. This final question: the role of the UN. There were a number of resolutions by the Security Council, a number of resolutions by the General Assembly. There were sanctions imposed on Serbia by Security Council. There were sanctions imposed on Bosnian Serbs. ICTY, but these sanctions, they did not, just like those sanctions today against, not sanctions, but you have a pressure, international pressure on Israel, these court cases, possible court cases, plausible genocide and all that, it doesn't mean much for Israeli leadership. They did not change. They don't change. In the same way, Serb leadership at the time was not affected. I mean, maybe Milosevic eventually was affected. He wanted to come out of this isolation, international isolation, to have Serbia without sanctions, and that's why he was ready for the compromise. But Bosnian Serb leadership, I mean, they were. You know what they did? They arrested UN peacekeepers. They arrested international supervisors, and they chained them, and they brought their national TV, and they put this on CNN. They said, if you continue with those resolutions, we're going to kill them. So they play a stronger party. They really did not really much care about those resolutions from the UN. I think I have. Yeah, thank you.